Happy opening day. And with opening day comes the Reds and the Nationals, and it's the Reds against the former Reds, and there's a former National and all this. There's a lot of great crossovers going on here. So we thought we'd cross over with Ryan Clary, and I am Jeff Carr. He is Stephen Offenbaker. We are Locked On Reds. Ryan is Locked On Nationals, and we are set for some baseball that matters. And I am so excited, Ryan. Like, so much is going on with this opening series. The Reds and the Nationals kind of kicking it off here. There's definitely been a lot of crossovers in years past, but there's certainly a lot on the roster when it comes to the Reds and the Nationals. We'll kind of get into all of that, but what's the vibe around the Nationals as we head into opening day?
You know, Jeff and Steven, first off, this is just awesome to have baseball back in the air. I mean, it's incredible. You can smell it. You can smell the hot dogs. You can smell the beer. It is awesome. So happy baseball to everyone celebrating out there. But the Nationals, obviously, in 2024, they're still partaking in this rebuild. Not a lot of expectations up to this point. But as we've kind of continuously said, it's not really about the wins and losses this year. The wins and losses will come in the prospect column. It'll be about C.J. Abrams, our young shortstop who showed a lot this last year. It's going to be Josiah Gray, who you see in game one here today. I think he's going to be primed for a pretty big step up this season, as well as Mackenzie Gore, and obviously not to mention Dylan Cruz and James Wood down in the minor leagues being top 15 prospects in all of baseball. Those are kind of the things that we're paying attention here in Washington, D.C., and really, that's kind of what people should care about because it's all about the future here for right now. You don't need to win 80, 90 games this year. That's not the expectations because the expectations probably going to win 65 to 70 games this season. What about you guys up in Cincinnati?
That's kind of where we were a year ago.
We're nicked up, yeah. we're not the team we thought we were going to be heading into this game. It's interesting to me the amount of crossover that we're going to be facing. But for the Reds, you know, we're coming into a season that for the first time in a long time, you want to talk about expectations. For the first time in many, many years, the Reds enter the season with expectations to play well, expectations to compete in the National League Central, expectations to get into the playoffs. And while things have not gotten off to a great start as they left spring training and headed up to Cincinnati, even with the multiple injuries, with Matt McClain out, with TJ Frito out, with Noelvi Marte suspended, all of those things happened. This team still can put a lineup on the field against Josiah Gray that's going to be pretty formidable. I can expect that this starting lineup that you're going to face today is a lineup that's going to put some runs on the board.
Yeah, that's something too. Like thinking about Josiah Gray, like he showed to be pretty decent last year at times, and I know he wasn't like consistently good, but for the most part, he had a pretty good season. I know he pitched well against the Reds on one occasion in particular, but overall, how the Reds match up with him, kind of looking at some expectations for him. I've seen some over-unders on strikeouts and things like that, around 5.5 for Josiah Gray in this game, and the Reds lineup as a whole, while it is dangerous and while it can score some runs, it can swing and miss too. That was something that kind of plagued them a little bit last season. How they move forward with that on top of everything else, there's so many question marks, not necessarily in that we don't know where the answers are. We can see the answers. We just need to actually, the players actually need to get these answers out on the field. But with all of that, striking out was something that the Reds did quite a bit last year. However, the run scoring potential is there. And how can they take advantage of that? Something that I wanted to kind of jump into really a lot in this episode. Jesse Winker, Nick Senzel, Derek Law. Josiah Gray was a prospect for the Reds, didn't actually make it to the major leagues with them. I can't think. I'm trying to think if I forgot anybody, but
a lot of Reds.
It's going to be a reunion here on opening day.
I know, and you know what? A lot of people are too excited about, you mentioned Nick Senzel over there in the hot corner. When the Nationals signed him this offseason, it kind of fits the mold for what you're looking for in this rebuild. You kind of want those former top prospects, someone who did have a lot of expectations. And if I do believe he actually had a really good rookie season, or at least his first few games up in Cincinnati there. And then ever since then, just hasn't really clicked for him. So getting that second chance here in DC, not a lot of people are really expecting all too much, especially when you have someone like a Brady House down in the minors who's one of the Nationals' top prospects, waiting to take over at some point this season, maybe later on, maybe it's in later on in the summer, maybe early on. We don't really know at this point, but kind of with Nick Senzel in particular, he's kind of been the hot name this spring training, with kind of a lot of fans have been attacking him, kind of looking at him being like, listen, you're not Jeimer Candelario. You guys have Jeimer right now. He was a fan favorite from this last year. Kind of replacing him and what he had over at third base last year. He ain't going to do that production this year. I can tell you that right now. Just from what we saw in spring training, wasn't really hitting for power. The glove wasn't really entirely there as well over at third base. It just didn't really seem to click. But as you said, there are a lot of other Reds. Jesse Winker, in my opinion, who's kind of came on out of nowhere. I didn't really expect Jesse Winker to make the opening day lineup. Well, here he is today. He's likely going to be your starting left fielder here at this point in time. I would expect Jesse Winker not to have a solid season, but I wouldn't be surprised to see him have some sort of kind of recollection project here in DC and kind of bouncing back. The Nationals have done this in years past, even with another team from the NL Central with Lane Thomas, who's kind of shipped over from John Lester just a few years ago. Maybe Jesse Winker finds it because he was a former All-Star. I think Nationals fans are more excited about that signing rather than a Nick Senzel or even a Derek Law, which Derek Law actually had a really good spring training, for what you expect. Not all too great, but still, he's going to be on this team. He's going to be pitching in some prominent innings. I just think people need to kind of lower some of the expectations for them as these former Reds.
I think that Derek Law and Nick Senzel are both going to end up being really good players for you. In the case of Derek Law, he was perfectly fine in Cincinnati last year. He got into 54 games, 3.6 ERA through 55 innings, was really pretty much a decent workhorse. And just the Reds upgraded their bullpen. He wasn't part of the plans kind of thing. With Nick Senzel, he has for years now needed a change of scenery. He has needed a fresh start, a new opportunity, someplace to go where he could start over. The relationship between Nick Senzel and the Reds front office was very, very strained and publicly so on multiple occasions. So I hope that I always wanted the best for Nick Senzel. I thought that he was going to be awesome. I feel like the Reds did him a bit of a disservice in the way that he was handled early on in his career. And I really hope, with the exception of games where he's playing us, that he just goes down there and knocks the cover off the ball and tears it up. I really hope I hope he ends up being one of your all-stars this year. That's really what I hope for Nick Senzel. And I think he has the potential. Now, if he can get back to that or not, that remains to be seen. But the talent, it's still in there somewhere.
He murdered left-handed pitching. That's what he did really, really well last year, to the tune that, there were a lot of folks that kind of wondered why the Reds let him go, but it wasn't about the lefty-righty splits. It was about kind of where the relationship had gotten to. And Steve's exactly right. Like, it was time to move along. And the guy that the Reds signed this offseason, Jeimer Candelario, whenever it happened, there were a lot of folks that were like, why? We got like 100 infielders, and you only play 4. I don't know why you had to go get so many, and now we got another one. But with injuries, with suspensions, with the way that the roster has churned, he is now going to be a key part. He was already going to be a key part, whether he played first or third or DH or whatever. They had said he was going to get mostly everyday playing time. He is certainly going to get that now, especially at third base with Noelvi Marte suspended for the first 80 games and likely more as he ramps up after the suspension is over and stuff like that. So Candelario is going to be playing a lot of third, and he's going to be in the middle of this order. Probably, if I had my way, I'd say 5th. I could see him batting 4th based on how David Bell would situate this lineup, but 4th, 5th, 6th, somewhere around that area, and kind of be a RBI guy for a lot of fast guys, a lot of guys that hopefully can get on base quite a bit. And when we kind of look at this matchup, like I feel the right-handed pitching on opening day, I was a little bit worried that it was going to be Patrick Corbin on opening day, not going to lie. I kind of want to get into the pitching matchup a little bit more here in just a minute. And also, we're going to give you a few predictions as to what you can expect from opening day. And that's coming up next. GameTime is the best way to get to the ballpark. It's the best way to get last-minute tickets as well. They've got great savings on last-minute deals. Do what Steve and myself do. We go down to the banks. We find our spot to hang out, whether it be at the Holy Grail or Condado or, all the different spots. So many different spots at the banks down there to hang out. You wait till close to first pitch for the Reds, and then you hop on the GameTime app and find your deal. GameTime also has the ability, if you're out of town, going to other teams' stadiums, will give you the view from your seats so you know exactly what you're getting. Download the GameTime app today, and for a limited time, all users can use the code FIRSTPITCH for $20 off a minimum $150 purchase. That is the code FIRSTPITCH to get $20 off a minimum $150 purchase. GameTime has the last-minute tickets at the lowest price, guaranteed. Is your TV tuned to Fox Sports, ESPN? Are you tired of all the yelling? I got your solution. Go to Locked On Sports today, 24/7 on YouTube streaming, the YouTube channels, or on the Fire TV channels as well. Locked On Sports today, 24/7 has all the biggest sports stories covered on the local side by Ryan, Steve, myself, and other Locked On hosts, as well as our national shows that cover every league. Check out Locked On Sports today, 24/7. Subscribe to it on YouTube, and go check it out on the Fire TV channels app. And thanks as always for making Locked On Nationals and Locked On Reds your first listen every single day. So much more coverage of opening day, of the opening series, opening weekend. Baseball is back, so make sure you follow both of our podcasts as we head into the weekend. It's going to be a busy season for both clubs, and I kind of want to break down the pitching matchup here because Josiah Gray had a pretty decent season last year. Frankie Montas pitched one inning. He did, he got 4 more outs than the 3 of us combined last year because he was coming back from shoulder surgery. With this matchup and the fact that he was named opening day starter up against Josiah Gray, who I don't necessarily know, what was it close for Josiah Gray over Patrick Corbin, or kind of where was that?
No, so it really wasn't, because Josiah Gray was the all-star for this team last year. And really the Patrick Corbin thing, like, I don't know if you guys have been following it all too much, but Patrick Corbin statistically has been the worst starting pitcher in all of baseball, literally, over the last handful of years. So it would have just been a sign of respect because it's his last year of his contract, but it was always going to be Josiah Gray, in my opinion.
Okay, so that's something that intrigued me a little bit because I kind of felt like the deficiencies of the Reds lineup against left-handed pitching, that's where I was sort of worried. But what will Reds fans see as we head to Great American Ballpark with Josiah Gray on the mound today?
I think one thing that fans will see with Josiah Gray is that when Josiah is on, he's on. Like, this is someone who has a deep repertoire of pitches. This is someone who can throw a changeup at you, which when he was debuting with you guys back in the day and way down in the minors, that was one of his premier pitches. Since then, he's kind of developed a lot of different things. He's developed a nice little slider, even then a curveball that he's thrown in every now and then. But this spring training, one thing has kind of been for sure with Josiah Gray is when he's on, like, he's going to have a very good outing. That is the big thing, though. If you get on Josiah Gray early, as we have seen kind of throughout his career, he's kind of someone who doesn't really lose on the mound. Like, it's not going to unravel real quick, but it has at times. It's not uncommon considering he's still a younger pitcher. I mean, this is, again, his 3rd full season up in the major league. So, your expectations grow a little bit, but still, we have seen it in years past with Josiah, in which he's kind of gotten in trouble at times. He's walked too many guys. At one point this spring, he walked 7 batters in an outing. That's not good. That's not going to win you baseball games. And you're going to run into some trouble, especially when you do have this offense like the Cincinnati Reds, who can kind of blow it up at times. You've seen it last year. You guys had that red hot summer in which felt like the Cincinnati Reds were rolling their way into a World Series title. But we'll just see which Reds team that we get. But with Josiah Gray, the only thing I'm very concerned about is that he's got to stay level-headed. If he can stay level-headed, if he can get the consistent outs, the defense makes plays behind him, and he can get some strikes called his way, I think Josiah Gray will have a solid outing because, again, he was the Nats All-Star last year. This is their best pitcher on the roster right now. We'll just see what he can do on opening day.
Yeah, that was something that I kind of wonder a little bit on which lineup that we'll see, Steve. But with Frankie Montas, it felt like his most recent start in spring training sort of gave us a bit of confidence for today.
Yeah, I think, and the downside of that is that he's coming into this now, have a lot of Reds fans not seen him. He is new to the team. And due to the lack of spring training television coverage for the Reds, people haven't gotten an opportunity to really see who he is. So coming into a new city, coming in with the pressure on you to really instantly fall into being the leader of this rotation from a veteran standpoint. And then we suddenly find him as the opening day starter, which none of us saw coming. Nobody saw that coming when he was signed here. The assumption was that it was going to be Hunter Green. It was always going to be Hunter Green. He is the face of the rotation. He is the guy. And lo and behold, here we are now, Frankie Montas, having, as you say, Jeff, pitched just about an inning last year, comes in to be an opening day starter, something that he's done before, but on the grandest stage of opening day baseball, Cincinnati, Ohio. This is not your average, typical run-of-the-mill opening day. There is a whole lot of fanfare that goes along with this. And I'm going to be interested in seeing how he responds. Jeff, I did a solo show a couple days back because of our schedules. And in that show, I said some of the things that Frankie Montas had to say during the media day in Cincinnati really resonated with me. He made it clear that he is embracing this role of leadership. He talked about how when he was named the opening day starter, the first thing he did was go to Hunter Green and tell Hunter Green that he's going to start a lot of opening days in Cincinnati. And if he wants to use the fact that he's not starting this one as fuel to get better, that's exactly what he should do. Frankie Montas did not allow this to become a clubhouse distraction. He did not allow this to have an animosity moment, things build up and boil over. He attacked this thing like a leader. And given his veteran experience, given that he started opening days, given the way he's handled all of this since being named the opening day starter, I'm excited. I think the Reds rotation now has that anchor, that calming presence that can help these young guys that still have not quite been able to string it all together and reach their potential and do the things that we're expecting of them. I think he's going to help take some of that pressure off, provide a little bit of guidance, and help move this team into being that playoff team we think they can be.
Yeah, that was something for me too, is like the appointment of Frankie Montas was more about the fact that Hunter Green just didn't get it handed to him, because it felt like that was what was going to happen. It felt like if it wasn't Hunter Green, maybe you see Andrew Abbott because he was the best performing pitcher last year. Maybe you see Graham Ashcraft because he threw the most innings last year and was probably the most consistent, although he had, that 8-game stretch there in the middle of the year where he was just really, really bad. But everything else was really good. But overall, the Montas appointment was more so for me about Hunter Green, which, kind of looking ahead a little bit, the way that game 2 of this series is going to go is very interesting to me, because that is his first appearance of the season. And how does he take this? How does it resonate with him? Because he started the year pretty slow last year. He can't really do that again. Like, this is the year where Hunter Green really needs to step up. But from a Frankie Montas side of things, like, he's got a very nice pitch repertoire. We're not talking about a guy that can only rely on 1 or 2 pitches. He is going to be able to call upon a bunch of different things. His splitter is really his out pitch, but he's got a lot of other stuff that he can kind of throw a hitter's way as well. And I'm going to be intrigued to see how he matches up with this Nationals lineup that isn't necessarily on anybody's board as far as power rankings go, but I think has lots of grittiness within it. I mean, you talk about CJ Abrams, Joey Meneses. I mean, that's something that I want to get your take on a little bit here, because I think that as we talk about run scoring potential, that is something that we feel we know about the Reds. I think it's a little bit more of an unknown about the Nationals. We'll make it known coming up next. Before we do that, though, I want to tell you about PrizePicks, because PrizePicks is the best daily fantasy app for you to check out this baseball season. They've got all kinds of great stuff. I'm looking right now, like today, there are some great lines, and they've got hits, runs, and RBIs for everybody in the game. Elly, Jake Fraley, Jamer Candelario, they're all set at more or less of 1.5. So 1.5 hits, runs, RBIs. I think you could put together a really nice PrizePicks selection here, because when you pick up to 4 picks, you can win up to 100 times your money, 4 or more picks like that. So I'm looking at Elly De La Cruz, 1.5 hits, runs, RBIs. He's going to get a single and he's going to score a run. Boom, there's 2. That's more. Then you look at Lane Thomas. He killed the Reds last year. I think it's worth clicking more on the 1.5 for him as well. And I think that Spencer Steer is hitting us an opening day home run. That's easy money right there. Hits, runs, RBIs, blah. You got 3 already with that. So you can pick those 3 on PrizePicks today. Use the code LOCKEDONMLB and you'll get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Again, that's PrizePicks. Sign up today, download the app, use the code LOCKEDONMLB and get a $100 match, up to $100 match on your first deposit. Pick more, pick less. That easy. All right, we are into it now. We've got predictions. We've got what we're looking for in this series. But I do, real quick, before we jump into that, like, where are you at with this lineup, Ryan? Because I feel like there are some dangerous guys.
You know, there are. CJ Abrams at the top of the lineup last year. Once he got moved to that leadoff spot, that's kind of when you saw CJ Abrams take off. And it wasn't really anything having to do with a mechanic change. It was kind of more so just the confidence going back into your franchise shortstop. Davey Martinez pulled him aside and said, listen, your time is now. You're going to be in the leadoff spot. You're going to be the shortstop every day. Go and take it. And once he got up to the leadoff spot, he did exactly that. He was killing the baseball. He was starting to hit for a little bit more power. He was starting to find the gap. And really, you just saw a much more complete player. And also, CJ Abrams, what he does best is run the bases. This is going to be someone who will, if he's 100% healthy, will steal 50-plus bags this year, in my opinion, relatively easily. Because last year, he went 20-plus base attempts and never got caught in that span over the month of July, even into August at some point last year. So I think CJ Abrams will be kind of a dangerous guy. Someone we did not really mention, we all know his name, Joey Gallo. Joey Gallo was real quiet all spring long, but we do know this. All it takes is a fastball down the middle that you leave hanging, or it's a hanging breaking ball. Joey Gallo will hit that thing 500 feet away. So if you can kind of get some momentum going, whether it's CJ Abrams or Joey Gallo or even a Lane Thomas, as we mentioned, who, as you guys know, is a Cincinnati Reds killer, there can be some damage done in the for your rotation. I'm a little hesitant, though, to say that this will be carrying them the entire season. But over the course of a few games, they will definitely get their fair share of beating. So we'll just have to see what this offense can do overall. But keep an eye on those names.
You know, Lane Thomas hit 28 home runs, 86 RBIs last year, and I feel like all of those came against the Cincinnati Reds. Like all of them. That's just how it feels.
Lane Thomas is really good. I mean, this is someone who I love. I mean, we mentioned him earlier. You got him in return for a John Lester back in 2021. I mean, it was an awesome trade. And as you mentioned, I was looking up his numbers here before the show. He has a 356 batting average against the Reds. This is someone who has hit 7 home runs in over 16 games, I believe, against the Reds. I mean, this is prime Barry Bonds, guys. So forget what we have said.
I feel like no matter what's going on in the game, this whole series, I just want to see him walked. Just put him on base. We'll get the next guy out.
Well, and you mentioned the Abrams steals and stuff. That's going to be an interesting opening challenge for a catching group that Luke Maile, at least defensively, looks slightly better than Tyler Stevenson last year, but both guys really need to take a step forward behind the plate this year. Tyler Stevenson was very inconsistent at throwing guys out, one of the worst pop times, according to Baseball Savant. I was looking at him the other day. That's why I still have that memorized. But it's something that CJ Abrams is going to really be able to test them out, and could see him getting a few steals this series. I think there's going to be a lot of running. I remember Elly did some running on the Nationals last year, so I'm looking forward to seeing what the Reds have in store that way. So let's kind of run into that. See what I did there? Let's look at some predictions for this series. We're not going to go like, wins and losses and stuff like that, but give me a few things that you're feeling, each one of you guys. And Steve, I know you want to say something, so go ahead and say
No, negative. No, I just sometimes just got to let you cook and just let it happen. But I do want to talk about this too, because you're talking about the predictions and things that we're going to say and what we want to see happen. I am very, very interested in what the end of the season stolen base totals truly look like. And because of the rule change in Major League Baseball with this obstruction of the base, and we talked a little bit of this yesterday with Charlie Goldsmith and Austin Elmore, how this is going to impact the players, because I think at this point the catchers do not stand a chance. If they're going to throw the ball the way they've been taught their entire lives, and really the best place to throw a ball down to second base when you're trying to get a runner out, in order for there not to be an obstruction call, the fielder is going to have to let that ball hit the runner in the rib cage. That is really what they're going to have to do. So catchers are going to have to change the way they throw. And this comes on the heels of Major League Baseball making the bases larger, so there's less distance to cover, which was already an effort to raise stolen bases. We may see somebody steal 100 bases. Maybe not quite that bad. Let's say 80. Somebody might get 80 this year, given the rule changes between last year and this year.
And it'll be C.J. Abrams, of course, Steven. And he'll get those 40 of those this weekend in Cincinnati. But
40 of it, yeah.
Half of them this year, just in the first 3 games of the year. So we'll see how that goes. But honestly, as far as predictions go, kind of looking into this Reds series, if we're going to go kind of in-game, not necessarily in-game, but I'm going to give you this. Jesse Winker or Nick Senzel will go yard in a crucial moment at some point this time. Listen, we were kind of joking about it before the show, guys. You just kind of had that feeling that one of these former Cincinnati Reds will come back to bite you. I've had that same feeling as well. And also, listen, Jeimer Candelario, our guy from this last year, he was a fan favorite here in town. You actually still see jerseys that Nationals fans had from this last year. He was that beloved here in town. He's going to kill us at some point as well. I don't know when it will be, but I just have that feeling it'll be against Patrick Corbin on Saturday in game 2 of this 162 game slate. So those are kind of the things that I'm looking for in this series, but one of those former Reds will get you guys back.
Yeah, that's something that last year it felt like as soon as we would pronounce Nick Senzel just done for the year, or, his performances were done, he'd hit like a walk-off home run or something like that. So I could see that being an annoying occurrence in this series. I think for me, and I mentioned this on our show yesterday, I think Elly's going to steal home at some point this series. And I said it's going to be on opening day. That was more of a bold take. I still think he's going to do it in one of these 3 games. The Reds are going to steal bases like crazy. I mean, they showed it in spring training. What they were doing in spring training was not to pull the wool over anybody's eyes. They were doing double steals. There was a double steal where TJ Friedl stole home. And of course, TJ Friedel's hurt. He's not going to be in this series, but I can still see that with Jonathan India on base and Elly De La Cruz on base, or there could be a situation where you've got Elly and Spencer Steer. Spencer Steer is a sneaky good base runner, and you have some interesting dudes at the bottom of the lineup like Will Benson, who is going to be all over the base paths whenever he is there. So I think that there's going to be a lot of steals happen. I think that we are going to see Elly steal home. I'm feeling it. I'm just feeling it inside.
You mentioned a name that doesn't really get thrown out all too much, but Will Benson kind of scares me. He's just kind of one guy who I went to Camden Yards last year when you guys were up playing against the Orioles. I saw him up close and personal. He pimped this one home run that I think is still flying. You guys should actually duck, by the way, because it might still be landing there. I'm afraid of him, man. That guy is a physical freak. He is huge. He can run the bases. He's got a little bit of pop in there and plays a damn good center field as well. So he's kind of someone who scares me a little bit as far as the Nationals go, especially going up against Josiah Gray in game 1. I would not be surprised to see him get a hold of one and maybe pull one out to right field there.
What's going to be really interesting with Will Benson is how he performs in game 2, because for the first time in a long time, he's going to be starting against left-handed pitching as well, given the Reds' injury situation. So he's going to be an everyday player out of the gate, and he's going to have an opportunity to prove if he can continue to be an everyday player or if he's going to force the Reds to go make a move. So that second game of the season, that first game against a lefty, I am really interested to see how he performs.
And that's back-to-back days that we've mentioned Will Benson. I really hope that he comes up big on opening day, because it'll be 3 straight days we get to talk about Will Benson. That is where we will end today's podcast. Thank you all so much for checking out today's Locked On Reds, Locked On Nationals crossover. Like I mentioned, a long season ahead And this series is going to be a lot of fun. So you're going to want to hear both sides of it. Make sure you check out Locked On Nationals and Locked On Reds, wherever you get your podcast or right here on YouTube, because we are Locked On Reds and Locked On Nationals every single day.